Hello everyone, welcome to Nico's storytelling show. The reason behind this podcast is the natural human connection to storytelling. It serves us to tell hilarious jokes, bond with our co-workers, put our kids to bed. It serves businesses to pave their path ahead. Join my conversation with marketers, founders, and other experts. Together we will learn how to use stories, why they have existed for millennia, and why they improve our daily lives. Let's begin. Thanks for joining the conversation, Nikolay. It's fun to speak with somebody with the same name. Obviously, the Bulgarian names are quite common: Nikolay, Georgi, Ivan, etc. But it's also a lot of fun that we have similar expertise and paths, and at the same time, different stories that we can learn from each other. I will always start with the brief introduction. How do I know you? Why did I decide to invite you to this conversation? As actually the couple of my first guests, both Georgi and Nemo, which we got more acquainted, we got more familiar through LinkedIn. And actually, kudos to you for your LinkedIn activity because, first of all, you're always on my newsfeed. Second of all, the consistency, like you and Emo are really good examples for consistency on LinkedIn. Both for being present every day. I don't think you have missed any days in the past couple of weeks and months even, and for the consistency of the topics as well, because a lot of people, I'm sure you're familiar with, they struggle to pick one specific topic and build on this specific topic for a long period of time. Again, you are one of the examples to do this. Great to have you here once again, Nico. And yeah, tell me, how are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling great. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I mean, I also struggled with the content, like which way to choose, like what to write about, and so on. But now I've been going 6 days a week since probably April. I did 7 at some point, but I decided to give one day a break, for the algorithm for myself to breathe. But I've been going strong, so thank you for that.
Again, hats off to this because even for me that I've been doing content for quite some time, it's still a struggle to keep up. So off the call, I might ask you a couple of follow-up questions on
Sure.
how to speak with consistency.
Sure.
Um, I always started these conversations following the hero's journey, the hero's framework, obviously introducing the hero, which in our case, this is you, following up with the main problems and struggles that you have faced, and then the mentors that they have helped you along the ways, the obstacles that you have faced, the wins that you have acquired on this way. But actually, I wanted to start it off with something that we're just now talking about, the LinkedIn content and the type of content that you create. Now, for the time that I have been following you, and the main idea that I get from your profile is that you look for ways to improve people's daily lives, their daily processes, being the like no matter if it's in the personal lives or some business processes that you can work on and optimize. Like, could you confirm if this is the main idea of the profile, and like what do you want to tell your audience with your LinkedIn content?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I mean, it's because it's it's not, I wouldn't say it's niche, it's diverse, but it's also focused a lot on the mindset because I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Whether you do business or it's a personal situation, it's all mindset at some point. The way you think is how you act, and then that depends, that shapes the outcomes. So I'm trying to get to, if we put it in a funnel, because we like marketing and funnels,
Yeah.
that's kind of the core of it. So that's what shapes everything else. And that's my idea behind it, to shape or to help, not really shape, because that sounds in some way manipulative, but mostly to help people, switch their views. Because like, I think one of the best comments that you can get is, I didn't think about it that way. And I was like, oh, I
Mm.
love that. That was kind of the idea behind it, to bring you a new perspective, something new, something fresh, to make you think in a different way. Because once you see it in a different way, you start acting in a different way, and then your trajectory in your life just goes in a different way. So I think you were pretty spot on with the description there.
I love that fact that you mentioned, like the best thing you can hear is, oh, I never thought about it this way. It made me think of, one of the main sales techniques that I was taught, and the big books sell that if you want to sell your idea to somebody else, you have to make it sound like it's their idea. It's something that they thought of and it came natural to their mind. So this sounds a lot like this is the effect that you want to achieve with the people that you work with. Uh,
Sure, yeah, yeah. That's it. It's just I don't want it to sound like in a salesy way because, and I've been asked questions. So what do you sell? Like nothing. I was like, no, no, but really, what do you sell? Like nothing. It's just I'm just doing it for free. I don't want it to be like another job or anything. It's an outlet to let my mind like free and explore my creativity there, but also help others and also connect with like-minded people. So there are many benefits to it.
and you mentioned that you're starting from, working on the mindset, so getting your mind to approach the problems in a specific way. Like, can you can you describe with one, two adjectives what is the right mindset to get better in your daily lifestyle?
Well, I'm annoyingly positive. So if I had to give it one word, it would be positive. And if I had to be,
Mhm.
if I can choose, if it's a binary choice and I can choose to be negative or positive, I will always choose the positive side. It's like whatever happens, I see it at positive side, and then I also get the benefits from the positive side. So it works in a weird way. If you believe it, if it works. If you don't believe it, it doesn't work. So, you know, if you look at the negatives, you see negatives. If you look at the positives, you see positives. So that's kind of how I go about it. And if I had to describe it in one word, it would be positive. If I had to put another word, it would be opportunistic. Because if you're positive, you're just in a different, energy and view of the world, of the situation, and you start seeing opportunities rather than problems. And that's a huge change in mindset, because you're looking for ways to add value rather than kind of explore what's already there in a way, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
No.
But I do agree, like being positive and optimistic in a certain in most of the scenarios that you're in, it's better than overthinking everything and worrying what if this thing goes wrong. And I am also want to blame, like, intuitively the first thoughts when I'm facing a problem will be, okay, what are the worst case scenarios that I need to prepare for? I don't want to say that I'm negatively thinking about the situation. I still have the hope that it will turn out positively, but as a defense mechanism, I would say, okay, what are the worst case scenarios to prepare for, right? How do you focus on the positive things, especially when either social media or the TVs in front of us, the algorithm for most of those streaming services or channels is focusing on the negative, focusing on the drama. We know how ads sell, like this amazing this bad thing happened here in this town, this catastrophe happened here in this city. So how do you negate all of the negative things?
I think that comes with time and experience.
Mm.
But there's the point that you look at the positives, but you're also not ignorant. Like it's not that you just put your pink glasses and you just look only at the
Yeah.
positives. But that's how you approach it. You look at it overall, but you approach it through the positive side and through the opportunistic side. It's like, as you say, this happened in this town or whatever the situation is. Okay, cool. And it was like social media is taking over the world. People are, less engaged, more distracted, da 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 da, and so on. But then when you look back 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, even 5 years, you're living better than you've ever lived. So isn't that a is that something to think about? Like, so,
Yeah.
and again, it's point of view. It's the lens that you go through to look at. You need I guess, a general overview or like a global view to look at all the sides.
Yeah.
But when you go in a certain direction because you can go all the ways. Like you can go positive, negative, and you can solve all the problems in the world. So you pick something, you just go with it. That's how I think about it.
I think the key thing you mentioned here is to, take a look at the previous 5 or 10 years or even previous year, how to compare how are you feeling? Are really things that worse than before, or are things getting better but slowly? Because we as humans, we tend to be more and more narrow-minded and think about, okay, what are the worst things that are happening to me today? And forget about all the good stuff that happened yesterday. So I agree with your point that focusing on comparing the better moments with the worst moments is something that helps to think more positively.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, think about customer experience and marketing, for example. When you go to a
mhm.
restaurant, if you had a great experience, you're like, okay, you go home and you're happy. But if you had a bad experience, the first thing you do is you write a review. Like you don't write when you're like super happy. Maybe you do, but it's not that many
Yeah,
cases, maybe 1 out of 10 times. But if you had a really bad experience, you just write immediately. You're furious and you just go out there and type. And I know because I've done that. So again, but
yeah.
it's a choice. Everything is a choice.
It's so funny you're giving this example because exactly 1 week ago, I wanted to leave a very furious review for a restaurant on Google, but lucky for them, they didn't put their business on Google. And it's very weird because it was in the center of Sofia, and I couldn't understand how they are not on Google Maps. But yeah, they saved themselves a bad review. But I want to go back a little bit and connect with the hero journey. Now we talked together before. Oh, it was once, but I know a brief part of your story. I know that you are currently in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I suppose these were one of the initial stages of you transforming into the current hero that you are right now. Could you walk me and could you walk our listeners through, the first months and years of moving to Copenhagen and how did you start?
Sure. Well, it started long before Copenhagen. So I finished high school back in 2014, and I moved to Denmark 2014. So that's quite a bit of while, a bit over 9 years. And I moved to study. I lived in a city far up north when I came. I studied computer science for 2 years. I was about 6 months from finishing the degree, but I decided to quit because I didn't like it, just didn't feel like it. And it felt like a good decision at the moment. A few months later was the worst decision I've ever made. But when I look at it now, it's the greatest decision I've ever made. Because at the time that I quit the education, I had some work on the side. I was like, okay, I'll just work and get going. But then I also lost the work. So
Mm.
it was just a snowball effect, but down the slippery slope. So there was a lot of turbulence, and that's probably already we're looking at the third year there. Then I moved to another city where I started, worked all kinds of jobs, delivering restaurants, whatever you think about, because when you don't have skills, it's hard to find a job. And I didn't have an education to go with. And then I started working at the restaurant, and that's kind of when also the marketing and the entrepreneurial, mindset and ideas happened. That was back in 2018. I heard about this thing, drop shipping, and I was like, okay, it seems, easy. I'll just go and learn Facebook ads. I had a horrendous website. I made a few sales, but I lost more money than I've made, that's for sure. But I learned a lot of lessons. I was setting up a LLC because I was selling on the US market. So I was doing it through Skype, and then I was having like digital post boxes and whatnot. So it was quite a process. But anyway, I learned about Facebook ads. That's where it kind of got started. For some point, I put it on the back burner, so I was just working. And then by the end of 2018, I decided I want to study because I was like, I'm not going to study until I find out what I actually want to do. But then the thing is, I haven't done that many things and I don't know what to do. And the only way, but I realized that later, to find out what you want to do is by trying as many things as possible, kind of failing safely, quickly, and then going on to the next one. And then I decided to study, and that was end of 2018. So I started preparing beginning of 2019. I actually have one or two posts about that because I was working, it was part-time, but I was getting 200, 220 hours a month. And then so I would wake up, I would do breakfast, I would study for an hour, hour and a half, then I would go to work from 10 to about 8, 9 in the evening, sometimes 10,
Ooh.
go back home, and I was every day and every second weekend I just had off, which was again, I was studying, but I just wasn't working. And so that was my life from February to 1st of June, because that's when the exam for the English certification was.
Mm-hmm.
So when I took the exam, I applied for 3 subjects. One was business administration and something else. The second one was also pretty similar, and also your top choices. The first one, the second one, they have the highest priority, and my third one was actually marketing. And I put it as a third one, but I kind of had hopes or that gut feeling that it's going to be marketing. And the way it happened is that I got a response for the first 2 before the marketing one. And they were like, we're sorry, but we can't accept it because you don't have English in your diploma. I was like, what do you mean? I just took a test and I prepared for 6 months. It's like, isn't there a way to do supplementary courses and so on? I have all the points that I need to get in the program. They were like, nope, sorry. I was like, oh, shoot. And then I'm still waiting for my third one because if I miss that one, then I can't go. I have to wait for another 3, 4, 5 months. And at that time, I already decided to move to Copenhagen. So luckily, I got into marketing. That was 2019 in September. That's when I started. And I said, this is the point where I'm not going to trade any more of my time for money. Obviously, if it's a student position, it's slightly different because you're focused on the same thing that is a long term, like marketing. And I just put all my heart into it. I was doing 30, 40 hours a week just studying marketing because I didn't know how to study, first of all, because the first time when I did the education, the computer science, I failed it, not only because I didn't like it, but because I didn't know how to study. And also because when I didn't like it, I wasn't putting as much effort, so other people were kind of carrying me. So I was like, okay, I had to start from the basics, essentially, how to write the report and so on. So that's how I started getting going, and I started applying to companies since the day I actually started the education. And I've got over 200 rejections from companies. So I applied to over 200 companies before I got to get a student assistant position, which was in 21. But not to jump forward. I started studying 2019, then the pandemic hit 2020, March. I didn't have work. I had only the studies, but it's just not enough. So, and I saw this thing, I think it was a quote, if you don't get out of the pandemic with a skill that you can monetize, it's not up to the pandemic, but it's up to you. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm stepping on it. So I started learning WordPress because I knew a bit of, Facebook ads, WordPress. And then I saw there was an ice cream store just in the neighborhood. We're already talking 2020 April. And I saw they don't have a website. So I reached out to them. I said, hey, so you don't have a website, maybe I can help you. They're like, no, we already have someone that's taking care of it. I was like, okay, sure. And then a week or 2 later, I get an email. I was like, hey, we don't like the previous person and it's taking too long. So you can go ahead. I was like, okay, cool. What are the details, etc. 1 week, no response. 2 weeks, no response. 3 weeks, no response. I was like, okay, this is getting daunting. And on the 4th week, I saw that I just opened the email all the time. I saw that there was a small font with the email saying showing the number. So I just called the number and say, hey, this person, and we talked about 4 weeks ago, like, oh, it's good that you're calling. We actually lost the password for the email. So we never seen your email. I was like, oh, okay. So this whole process is going in months. We started talking in April and we're already June. So like, okay, let's meet in 10 days and speak about it. So the process began in April and we started working by the end of June. And that was when I started with my first client. But the interesting thing was that we had the interview in the car while she was doing deliveries. So I was also helping with, with the deliveries, with cakes and whatnot. We're having a conversation at the same time. And she was like, okay, cool, we can help with a website, but you also need social media help. Do you know someone? And I was like, I don't know someone, but I could be the someone. It's like, okay, sure, you can go ahead. And that's how everything just started rolling. I get another client about a month or two later. Then I continue studying. Then I got a few more clients. And then by the end of the year of 2020, I believe, I had 4 or 5 clients that I was working with, also studying. And then things started rolling out. I lost a few clients, but then also just before the Christmas, I said to myself, if I don't find a student job, I'm not going back home for Christmas. And that was 2020. So I didn't go back home. And that was actually the best decision I've ever made
Hmm.
because on the 26th of December is when I applied for a position, which I saw a month early, but I didn't apply because I didn't think I'm qualified for it. And because I didn't like it. But a friend of mine was like, how hard can it be? You can learn it. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So I applied on the 26th. On the 4th of January 21, I got a response. And then on the 8th of January was my interview, 40 minutes at 1 o'clock to 1:40. And then at 3 o'clock, I got a call that I'm going to be the person for that position. Um,
Oh.
so it was
And
quite a journey.
is this still the current position you are in, or is it another company?
It was a transition from for where I am now because I
Okay.
I was still studying. So that was my student position, which I was doing twice a week. And things started rolling. I had some clients on the side. I was working also as a student position, also studying full time. So all that thing was going for throughout 2021 and almost throughout the whole 2022. Uh, and then by the end of 2022, I managed to secure a full-time position. I also did a 3 months internship in 2022, but I managed to secure a position from 1st of January this year. So all those things led me to where I'm today, essentially.
Well, so a lot of things, not just a couple of things, but a lot of things on your story right now. First of all, very happy that you managed to first introduce us with the initial situation, the start of your journey. Where were you? Where were you headed? And second of all, that you explained most of the challenges that you have faced. I'm sure that there were others as well that some
Absolutely.
small issues, some small mishaps that still managed to push us around and make us more furious about why the things are not happening in the specific way that we want to.
Mm.
But the first question that I wanted to ask about all of these stuff. So when you start studying computer science or something in this industry, in this niche, usually what we hear from our family, our surroundings is stick with it, even if you don't like it. In just a couple of years you'll have a great salary and you'll be chilling with a little bit of work daily. How how did you bring up the courage to actually say, okay, I know that this is not for me and I want to quit it. I want to try with something else, even if I don't have a backup plan? Because I'm sure probably I'm guessing with the number, but I can bet that at least 60 or 70% of the people work stuff that they don't like.
Mm.
So how did you manage to get this courage to do it?
Oh, it would be really cool if I say that it was all courage now, but it wasn't. So it was part courage, part ignorance, part ego. But I've always been supported by my parents, so they said, whatever you do, we support you, which is a great thing, but it also could backfire. You could go either way, if it doesn't work the right way. So luckily, it worked out for me. But I mean, I knew that that's not what I want, and then I didn't really have a plan, which was some of a mistake from my side. So I just went on rolling. Things worked out, but it took a whole year for the things to start rolling out, and that was probably one of the toughest times to have because you're not employed, you don't have an education, so you're just kind of rolling. You're in the nowhere. So I don't know how did that time go, but it was tough.
This is the key thing, like especially when you're ambitious and you're in such situation that you mentioned, no job, no education, and you're just jumping from a job to another job. It's like, okay, what's happening with me in my future and my next 5, 10 years. But kudos to you that you have managed to go through this. I know that a lot of people are have either went through the same journey or are currently in the same situation, no matter if they are still second year college students or even some people that are 30ish, 40ish years old. Life has this tendency to give us give us some opportunities, give us some space to grow and to feel comfortable, and then on the second or third year to say, okay, let's get back to the basics. Let's give you some challenges that you need to face so you can grow further. Which you can be mad about it, but it's still the way of life, especially if you want to grow and improve your skills in one way or another.
Yeah, and that happens when you think that everything is like all right. That's when it typically happens. You think you're on top or you got everything sorted out. They're like, nope, not today. Yeah, I actually had a funny story at that time because I was living, as I said, in one city, and that was
Yeah.
when a kid quit, and then a bit after that, it's when I moved to the second city. But before that, I was like, okay, I'll try to find work in the next months, and if I don't, then I'll move. And I went to a pizzeria, worked for a few days. The guy was like, "No, you're too slow." I was like, "What do you mean? I just started like a day ago." I was like, "What do you want me to do?" He's like, "No, too slow." And I was biking 7 kilometers one way and the other
Wow.
to go to work. He's like, "No, okay." Then I tried. I moved to another apartment, and I had a guy who was working in the who was working with cows, chicken, and so on in the in a village from the side of the city. And I was like, "Is there work for me?" She was like, "Oh, there's plenty of work. We'll just find something for." Her. I was like, "Oh, that's wonderful." Um, and the work there starts at like 3, 4 in the morning, because it's labor. I was like, it doesn't matter. All I need is just work. It was like, cool. So I signed up in a different website. I went for an interview in a farm, and the guy was like, "So this is the farm, da da da, da etc." It's like, but I don't see you working here. I was like, what do you mean? Like, we just met. I was like, you're too pretty. I was like, what does that mean? Because on the CV, I had a picture with like a shirt and then a blazer. I was like, I don't see you working here. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, yep, I just don't see it. And then when I look back at it, it's like the best things that didn't happen, actually, they're the best things that could have happened. Um, which is a very funny thing, but you have to look at it in retrospect. And then I moved to another city. On the third day, I found work, and then there were also challenges. I worked for a few months, then I had 2 months off again of work. But yeah,
And this is something that shows how you came up with this mindset and how you came up with the way of thinking that you have right now. You mentioned it in the beginning. You have to take a look in retrospect, like, okay, compare the stuff. Right now might seem like the worst thing that happened to you, but you never know how things will turn out in the next couple of weeks, months, or even a year. Like you have to be patient and to actually, but this is at least what I have realized for being on my journey. You have to be patient, and when there is a big loss at you, at this point I even get excited because usually after a big loss there is a big win coming out. So, oh, this was my biggest loss in my whole life. I can't wait to see what happens in the next couple of weeks or months. But at the same time, obviously, you cannot be only hopeful and gullible about it. You have to put in the work as you did. You realize that you need some skill sets. You found a specific niche or a specific opportunity currently with the WordPress sites that you mentioned and the Facebook ads that you have mentioned. And this is what led you to what you're currently trying to master. If I'm not wrong, you are responsible for the performance marketing of your current employee, right?
yes, I am. It's on the Amazon platform, but again, the basics that I got was starting for starting creating ads from Facebook ads, and then it kind of rolled out. And I think you spoke with Emo in one of the episodes or with Georgie, that you build skills as you go, whatever is kind of needed at the moment. And when I started with the clients, I didn't know social media, but I had to learn it because there was demand for it. And then I had to learn SEO because there was demand for it. Then I was doing photos and websites and design and brochures and catalogs and whatnot. So all those skills I've learned probably 8 different skills throughout the year of 2020 under the head of marketing because I had to, to be a one-man agency, to be a one-man army.
This is a very key thing for marketers. We spoke with both Georgia and Emo about it. Being diverse in your skill sets, especially when they are all connected in one way or another with marketing. What would you say are, let's say, the top three marketing skill sets that you're good at and that you want to develop further?
Personally,
Yes, yes.
well, I'm good with numbers, and at some point I thought I wanted to do like kind of finance, which is still a thing. Maybe I could do it in the future as a bachelor's or master's or whatever, because I like the aspect of it. So whatever involves that. But the thing is that the way things rolled out is that I'm in performance marketing, so they work it in the best way possible, the way I think about it. And when I look at it, I always know it's the best way possible. Uh, and I'm dealing with numbers on a daily basis.
Yes.
So I think well, not everyone is good with numbers. So there are people that are more creative. And something I learned is that I thought I'm not creative. I was like, you're just born with it. But then I got dropped into this position, and that's why I didn't apply initially for the student job. I was like, I'm not creative enough because it was in design and Photoshop and creating stuff. But then I realized that creativity is a skill that you can learn it as everything else. There are people that are extremely creative and they're just kind of born that way. But if you work your way, you can get decent at it. You could get very good at it. And for the least, it's going to be a good skill that you're going to have because you're going to have an eye for whatever it is, Even if you become a manager one day and you have a basic design skill, you see, okay, this is to the left, this is to the right, this has to be this way. So I think the more diverse you are as a marketer, the better, except if you want to be a specialist in something very specific. But personally, I think that's something also Emo mentioned. He called it a one meal person or something along those lines. There is a great book by David Epstein. It's called Range. And the subtitle is How Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. So he divides people into generalists and specialists. And essentially, if you're generalist, which I don't like to put labels typically because they're, boxes and frames that people are like, I'm marketing. No, you're just whatever you want. But if I have to put a label, I would say I'm generalist, and I like it that way because you draw experience and practices from different, subjects and aspects that you work at. I've worked from so many different aspects of marketing, and I've done so many different things. And whatever I start, I have a bigger base to draw from. For example, I worked with like 20 different platforms. And when I started a new platform, I learned pretty quickly because I see, common things, similarities, and I just draw from here and there. And then my mind just clicks, okay, this is like this is like that. So the learning curve is not as steep and it just gets easy over time. And as going back to your marketing question, I think that's more of a general question. Or more of a general skill, which is to learn how to learn. If you learn how to learn, you can become anything pretty much.
That's something like I love that you said it because I share the same mindset about this. If you spend enough time on it, no matter if you're born with it or not, if it's something that you haven't, interacted with at all in your whole life, you can still learn it. Let's say if I want to become a dentist, for some reason, if I give enough attention and enough time on this specific subject, I can master it and become a dentist eventually. So I think it's very important that this is something that's even taught even in school, because not to go too deep on the subject of what we are being taught in school, but if you have this skill to think for yourself and to stay long enough on a specific issue to understand it and to eventually solve it, you can get away with anything in life.
Sure. I mean, we can learn how to swim. We're not going to be Michael Phelps, neither of us. Maybe you can, but I can't, or at least I think so. But you can get decent at it, if if you look for feedback, because one of the key things about learning is feedback, and the quicker you can get feedback, the quicker you can learn. And I've learned that through the years. So I'm looking for those things, and those things is also going back to what I share. It's like the mindset, the way you approach it, the way you approach feedback. Something I wrote the other day is like the most positive thing you can get is negative feedback. Because
Okay.
that's where you get, the gold nuggets. That's where you get the value. Because if you just get praise, it's good, but you don't learn anything new. It's like it's fine. I like feel good, and my ego is, it's brushed and
Yeah.
it's nice, but there isn't much out of that.
Agreed, agreed. Like this negative but constructive feedback that we receive is definitely needed if you want to, move forward, especially if you become good at something and it's very difficult to give you some constructive feedback on something. As you mentioned, your ego gets stroked, you brush it more and more and more, and eventually when somebody
It takes
tries to give
over.
you some feedback, yeah, exactly, the ego takes over. I wanted to ask something else about now. You mentioned one of the first thing is that you're good with numbers, and in this specific skill and specific role that you have with performance marketing, obviously most of the things that you see will be the performance of those ads, right? But at the same time, you definitely need to work with the creatives who create the images, the texts, and all of these stuff. Mm, how often do you come across on you come across storytelling in those ads? Like, do you use stories to improve the performance on those ads?
I would say it depends on the ad, but to give a simpler answer, yes, because you need an approach to it, either being creative or logical or whatever it is. We need to have a meaning behind it, and if I have to use also, if we have to summarize, life and all the things I do in a way, meaning would be a key word there, because
Mm.
I believe that
Mhm.
everything you have to do or everything you do has to be meaningful. It has to have a meaning behind it. Otherwise, you're just, strolling around and uh, yeah, it's just out there. You're doing probably for the sake of doing it or just moving your hands. So it has a meaning, it has to have has a purpose, so you're intentional. Um, but going to questions, yeah, I believe so. It also depends on the campaign. In some less, in some more. But we need to have some at least.
Fair enough. Yeah, because I love that the fact that you mentioned that you need to have some meaning behind it. I noticed that actually one of your most recent posts was around this topic.
Mm.
And I just want to emphasize on how important it is for any employer to communicate the meaning behind all of their actions to their employees. Like it is a team essentially. Most employers and managers would like to compare their companies with being a family. However, I like the comparison and the mindset that the Netflix team uses. I'm going to share the title of the book after the call. I'm not
Sure.
definitely sure how was it, but the idea there was that they treat their company as a team. It is not something that it can be, it's not something that's very pretty. It's not very that's something very romantic, because if you're not one of the best performers on the team, you will be most probably on the bench sitting it out, or eventually you will be transferred to another team. However, this is what works best if you want to get the end goal, being the profits or increased market share, whatever the end goal is. This is the way to push your whole team further. And you cannot motivate your team. You cannot give more reason to your team members if they're not following the same meaning behind why you are doing the things that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, for example, if you remember everything you were told to do, you're like, why? Why
Exactly.
should I do that? But when you grow up, you think about it, but you don't ask it. You're just like, okay, I want to ask why I have to do it, but I just want. So that's something that's being lost in time. But you have to know why you're doing stuff. It's like why you're progressing, why you're doing this podcast, why you're pushing so hard, why do you want to achieve X, Y, Z, why do you want better life or whatever you go as. Because I want a better life for myself, or because I want to help others. The better I am off, the more help I can give to others, whether it being financial or else. It's like you can't give if you don't have. Like if you don't have energy, you can't give energy. If you're drained, so that's something I always say that you should take care of yourself first, to take care of others, which is
Yeah.
simple, but it's not easy.
This reminds me of the advice that we always have to preserve the kid inside ourselves,
Mm.
even no matter how old we get. And just as a side note, I love the fact that I still keep this part of it, especially when it comes to communicating with my girlfriend. Like, do this thing, but why? Why do I need to do this right now? So yeah, keep the why questions open. Something else that I want to move on to, like focusing more on the performance marketing and your current role, obviously along our paths, we usually learn by experience. As you mentioned, you found the opportunity, you found a client, and you learned most of the things that you know on the spot. But while you were doing this, at some point, did some mentors, some guides help you out in one way or another?
A few months later, when I started at the company that I currently at, which is Jabra, but before that, it was mostly, and also the way I learn is, I think you also talk about role models with the
Yeah.
previous guys. It's like there isn't a specific person I draw from everyone. I draw experience, whether you see the person as good or bad, you can always get something from someone. So the role models or the mentors were people from the books, which is a great mentor to have. For example, Dale Carnegie. You read his book, you get his mindset, his views. So yeah, okay, I like it. You approach whatever you like, whatever you don't like, you just disregard it. And I like to use this analogy, which is the steak analogy. So you take the meat, but you leave the bone. Uh, so you take whatever you like and then
Yeah.
leave the rest. Obviously, if you like bones, you can go with that, but you get the point. But later on, I did get a mentor when I started working as a student assistant, and he's been helping me a lot because it was also and still is my first corporate job. And as I said earlier, I've been rejected in over 200 companies. So I didn't have a corporate experience. So he helped me a lot to kind of get in the way. I already had the drive and the motivation and those things, but there were a lot of other things that I was lacking, like the communication part. I didn't know how to communicate properly. It was still an area that I would like to explore. And I believe I improved quite a bit. And that's also an area that I talk about on my LinkedIn. But he's helped me tremendously with the work, off work, outside work. So I'm very thankful to him. His name is Michael. So
Hey, Michael. Would you share one specific lesson that you definitely will take for the rest of your life with him?
sure. Well, the first thing was like when I was getting emails, and I would be very direct. Oh, obviously, also from Eastern Europe, people are more direct, which is like a cultural thing that you have to kind of learn and control a bit more. So when I was getting email, I was just shooting emails like with 5 words. So it's like, okay, this is this. Or like you have to be a bit more elaborative, You have to take your time, understand people, get in their shoes, because also at some point or at some level, impatient. It's like this guy doesn't understand this. So I'll just shoot an email with 3 words, which doesn't make it any better because I have to exchange 50 more emails.
Mm.
It's like take your time, write the email, be a bit more indirect, ask questions. If you can solve it in an email or two, hop on a call, build a relationship with that person and try to understand their point. And which is something I've been learning the past years, like you try to understand other person's point first,
Yeah.
and then you give yours. Because if you don't understand it, you can't comprehend it, obviously, and you also can't do an adequate decision.
I believe this is very relevant, especially today. Now, most of our communication after the pandemic, it became, remote, mobile, being on Slack or emails. And I love the fact that this is the one of the main lessons that you have learned and that you are sharing with us, because this is something that I also learned from my first mentor. Like everything that you write is a copy at the end of the day. It's not only the copies that we write for social media, it is the Slack messages that we write, it is the emails that we write. So as you mentioned, if we just shoot some emails with 3 to 5 words and replying and reacting to the last piece of information that we have received, at some point the communication gets broken, right?
Mm.
So as you mentioned, take your time, think through the lenses of the other person that you're writing to. Think what kind of information and what kind of even the formats in the way that you're going to communicate is important on, to perceive it better. So I love the fact that you mentioned how important communication is getting and that this is something that you will keep on working. For me as well, this is something that throughout my whole life, I'll definitely spend more energy and more skills to keep on improving. One of the reasons actually to start this podcast is to put myself on the spot and improve my communication with the guests that we have. So kudos again to Michael that he has taken you under his wing and that you're learning those little things in the corporate world, because it's a whole different beast out there when you're in a corporate team. It's a team, it's a company of a lot of people, and the more people you have, the more difficult the communication gets, right?
I mean, definitely, yeah. And something a subject that I've been keen on the past years is understanding people. Obviously, part of it is communication, but also to a great extent is psychology, which is greatly related to marketing. So if you're in marketing, I guess you have some idea about it. But it helps you in every aspect, understanding people. And at some point, you can just kind of predict what people would do, what people would say. So you tailor your communication, the way you speak, the way you act. So you benefit both of you, save time. For example, in the email example, you write in a way that minimizes the questions, minimizes the friction. So yeah, that's another skill I would say to people is learn people. And then later on you'll learn communication, how to communicate with those people. But that's kind of down the line, and it comes together with it.
It is a sentence that we repeat often as a joke, but at the same time, it's 100% accurate, especially for marketers. Know your audience, like know who you're talking to, and just if you want to get to the bottom of it, get into the shoes of your listeners, your readers, your audience. You mentioned a couple of times a lot of examples from books and authors, even on our previous conversation. So one by one, I want to close off this episode a little bit more, and I want to hear who are your favorite storytellers or authors at this point.
Okay, so there are quite a few books, but the first one that comes to my mind, his name is John Bunyan. He's a writer and I believe also a preacher, and he lived in the 1600s, so it's quite a while. He's written quite a few books. It's probably over 80 books. But his most famous books, and the one that I stumbled upon first, it's called The Pilgrim's Progress. Which talks about a person. Well, it also leans towards the Christianity and so on, but it talks about a person that carries a load on his back, most of the way. He goes through troubles, and he's faced with vices, and he faces many challenges. He's being tempted to take another road, and at some point in the middle of his journey, he leaves what he has on his back, and everything just gets so much easier. And whatever he has on his back is essentially his past, But you have to read the book to get it. But it's a great book, and that's a book that had a really good impact on me, and I really loved it. I have to reread it again soon. It's a phenomenal book, and it's written 1678, so quite a few years ago, a few hundred years ago.
I love those books that are, no matter at what age of the time they are written, they're still relevant to this day, like those evergreen books. So thank you for this recommendation. First of all, thank you for this specific recommendation because I'll take a look at it. And if you say that it's still relevant to this day, then it means it's one of the great books. And second of all, thank you for all of the recommendations that you mentioned on this episode. Definitely one of the standalone posts to promote this episode would be just the list of books that you've mentioned and how, and the main lessons that we can take from them. Um, One of the previous things that we did in my previous agency was this book club. So
Mm.
anytime anybody who recommends a book that somehow is relevant to marketing or psychology or business is definitely somebody that I will ask for another advice and another recommendation on books. So again, thank you for this. And yeah, I want to close off this episode simply by saying thanks for joining me. Again, most of the episodes that are happening are at the end of the working day. So it takes the time and the efforts to hop on a call and get those questions and share vulnerable stories from your past. I appreciate it. And if you want to say some final words to the audience, something specific that you want to close it off, let me know.
Sure. Well, thank you for hearing me, first of all. And I hope that it added value. And that's kind of the why I go about, for example, LinkedIn. It's like, why do you do LinkedIn? It's like, I just want to add value, whatever it is to a person, to 10 people, it doesn't matter. So if you got a value out of this, that's good for me. I'll sleep better, I guess. Better karma. But I think books and training have been the two things that kind of got me out when it was the hardest, because the physical training shaped the body, and then the book shaped the mind, and they have to go together. So if you want to have like a perfect structure, even though perfect is associated with something impossible, but you can strive for it. I would say books are the way to go. And we mentioned a few authors and a few books during the podcast. And I think another author that has made a great impact on me, I found out about him, I think a few years back, maybe 2 years, Robert Greene.
Yeah.
And I've read pretty much all of his books, if not all. But there's one book which is called Mastery. It's about, I guess that would be more useful for people, career-wise. If you want psychology, it's The Laws of Human Nature, which I just finished a while back. It's a phenomenal book about people. So, yeah, those would be my recommendations. I love books, and I hope more people read books because there are more benefits than just consuming information from the book. You get better focus. You also
Yeah.
improve your English if you read on English or Bulgarian, whatever the language is, because you pronounce those words in your mind. So it helps you increase your communication as well, increase your focus, your patience, your attention, because it's not like a TikTok. It doesn't take 15 seconds, and it doesn't work with summaries. Watching a summary about 3 minutes, you have to go through it. You have to relate. So yeah.
I mean, I love everything that you mentioned about the books. Definitely, those are lessons and those are some new skills that you get just from reading. I love the fact that you mentioned Robert Greene as well. I wanted to mention it. I'm sure you have heard this fact about him, but he as well, before he became a writer, he changed like 60 or 80 jobs, different jobs from one to other, and all different jobs similarly like you. So hopefully you and Robert Greene are on the same path. Hopefully that you become as quite successful as he is. And one main lesson that was definitely will be stuck in my head right now from our conversation is working out and books. If you want to be successful, work out and read. The rest of it will just fall naturally.
I mean, yeah, working out is essentially free. If you want, you can add a cost to it. You go to the gym or whatever. Books, it's pretty cheap. You can always find whatever, 5 euros, 10 euros, 15 euros, or you invest in a Kindle. It's a few hundred, but you can buy books cheaper in the long run. So whatever works for you. For me, it's physical books. I just like to feel the book, and I like to draw, and yeah. So. But thank you for the great conversation. It was a pleasure to be here.
Ian, Thanks for the time. Definitely, it was a valuable conversation to me, and wish you a good night for now.
Same to you. Namesake.
Thanks.
Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you for listening, friend. If you're still here, it means that you're born curious. Don't lose that spark. Join us in our next conversation. If you want to contact me, you can visit nicodobrev.com. This is NICODOBREV.com, or you can check out my LinkedIn profile, linkedin.com/in/Nico-Dobrev. Thanks for tuning in. Till the next episode.